Welcome to the Nagual Zone. I'm Anaam. Have you ever wondered what really is the difference between the acts of the average man and the acts of the Toltec warrior? I'll tell you the main difference today. Now, every living being must act, right? Acts are what defines movement. No act, no life being lived in terms of movement. Energy must act. So acts, no matter whether it's the average man or the warrior, must take place in any given moment in life, right? Now there is a big difference and a very clear difference between the acts of the trained warrior and the acts of the average man. And once you know this difference, I want you to evaluate yourself, self-assess, and take at least 5 years to self-assess. 5 years of ongoing self-assessment. Which category do you fall into? Which category do you fall into? So the acts of the average man never take into account consequences. 99% of the acts of the average man, there is no projection into the future. What could be the consequences of my action or inaction? Inaction is also act. It's an act. And this is what creates the difference between acts of power and simply acting something out, acting a script out. The warrior, on the other hand, what makes his acts of power is that the warrior is painfully aware of the consequences, the most likely projected future consequences of all of his acts. And the main concern that a Toltec warrior has whilst acting out, whilst creating momentum in their life. For a warrior, decisions must lead to actions of some kind, or inaction, which is also an action. The decision to wait. Waiting is an action. Sitting on the fence or inaction in that way, unless it's carefully part of a warrior strategy, is a bad idea. There are no good results, never any good endings with sitting on the fence with something. And the only thing that separates the average man's acts from the warrior's acts is that the warrior's acts are committed out of a great sense of consequences. Hence, self-responsibility for those consequences. Thus, they become acts of power. You see the difference? The average man, in my observation, the only time the average man ever is concerned about consequences is when some really bad news comes his way. So he's got some pain in his stomach, he goes to the hospital, doctor says you got 30 days to live because you've got stomach cancer or something like that. Now everything is, suddenly he's fucked, right? Everything is, oh, I've got to eat and watch this and watch that, and oh, and everything suddenly, all the consequences come crashing down on his reality. Those are the acts of a fool. The warrior already knows what led to that stomach problem in the first place. No one just gets up one day and they got cancer. That is years and years and years of practicing something that led to that. That is the result of repetitions. Now, the problem with life is that it does not recognize repetitions done in ignorance as an excuse to mitigate consequences. So life will never, ever, not once, not ever, have a little bit of extra mercy on someone. I didn't know that smoking so many cigarettes would lead to my body getting completely rogered in the end. I did not know. Everyone else was doing it. Yeah, life doesn't go, oh, poor chap, he didn't know, therefore we will just mitigate the consequences a little bit just for him, just for her. Doesn't work like that. So that is very foolish, amateurish kind of thinking, and the world of emotionally mature adults works with consequences and an awareness of them as you're ongoing in life. As you're living life, you're having to decide things every day. What to invest your precious time, attention, and energy in, and what not to invest or avoid. How much to avoid, how much to invest. All these things you must learn to calculate and to feel them out. Not even calculate, forget calculate, to feel them out, right? And then project in the future. What's likely to happen if I keep doing this? That way, you're closing the door behind you. You're not giving yourself a chance to say later on, oh, well, I didn't know. No. Everyone knows. Do you know what? Everyone knows. With the right kind of questioning, you can always determine and see and help the person see that they actually always knew. The first cigarette that they smoked, when that person was young and amazing, yeah, there was a voice, there was something that happened in their mind that they did not listen to. Everyone knows the consequences of what they're doing and the consequences of what they're not doing. So ignorance really is just that person may not be willing to admit. That is what the average man calls ignorance. Oh, I didn't know. And there are many, many, many things like that. The single mom script is like that. Single moms are always very surprised. Who? It's like they act like surprised for many years sometimes. You hold on. So at what point did you think that a man's semen entering your womb would not, I mean, how? What the hell? Have you noticed single moms are always surprised? They may not admit it, but there's a kind of a background surprise that they have. Like, oh, yeah, well, no. Unless you were forced, right? Then the surprise, and even then there's no need to be surprised. You know what's going to happen, right? Everyone knows the consequences of their actions. Whether they're willing to consciously admit it or not is another story. That is what makes the warrior's acts so powerful, because the warrior is fully aware of the consequences, and he or she acts after having weighed the consequences fully, so that there is never any question of lack of self-responsibility. So take the next 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, and self-assess all your decisions, all your acts, all your decisions and your non-decisions, what you're sitting on the fence with, and what you're avoiding, suppressing. And learn to think forward, project forward. Okay, if I keep doing this, what's going to happen in 10 years' time? If I don't do this now, what's going to happen in 10 years' time? You see what I mean? And really get aware of the consequences of each moment of your life. I did another video a long time ago called "The Warrior Lives as If There Are Consequences." It's a sorry state of affairs when the title is like that. The warrior lives as if there are consequences. There are consequences, but people are so insane that you have to pretend. Even if you can just pretend that, oh, there might be consequences, even then you will start moving towards acts of power slowly, slowly. On that note, let me know in the comments what you think of this video and any experience you have in your life with turning from acts of the average man to acts of power like a Toltec warrior does it. Walk in freedom. I'll see you in the next video. Farewell.